Hey, good morning, Facebook and internet. I thought I would do something a little bit different today than my usual walks. It's also raining outside here in San Diego for the next few days, which is rather unusual. And I wanted to sit down, which I haven't done before. You see me wearing my malas. You got your mandala back there. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about meditation and how that applies to your subconscious mind. Because I think a lot of people understand and have bought into the power of meditation, but don't necessarily understand the process and procedure. And oftentimes they use it as a tool for relaxation, which is great. But there's just so much more that this incredible resource can offer you. So I want to give you a pragmatic look into your subconscious mind, and then I want to take you through a quick practice, and we'll end this with helping you complete your week and also looking at how you can live for your Mondays and actually effectively use that day to create, okay? So that's what this video is about. So before we get into practice and what you can do, and I'm going to give you a simple meditation technique that can do a lot of healing and a lot of clearing work in your life, but I want to explain to you my understanding through the work of Vipassana, and by the way, that mandala back there is given to me by a friend of Nat, who's actually on her 8th day of Vipassana today. So bless her soul for going through that experience, and it's a really beautiful one. But what I've come to understand is that there's a simple universal truth to everything. When I say universal truth, I just mean truth across the board. And what that is that everything in the universe is rising and it's passing, meaning that it's being born and it's dying, like us, like the stars, like the universe. Everything is in a cycle of arising and passing. So when you are meditating, this is going to become a really important concept, and something that through many visits and experiences through ayahuasca ceremonies, I've also come to discover as an experience is the temporal nature of everything. So I just want to take you into the subconscious mind for a moment, and let's talk about what it's doing. And there's this belief that because it's subliminal or subconscious that we can't access it, which I no longer believe to be true. I just think that it's dormant and sitting in atrophy, and it's up to you to awaken this like you would awaken anything. Just like when you're a baby, all your muscles are in atrophy, you slowly learn to awaken them, and then you have a skill of walking, and that's something that you did. So you can do that with the deeper parts of yourself, and I believe down to the subatomic level, which is what the great enlightened masters of the past have done. So if you look at the subconscious part of the mind and we start thinking about it like a field with fertile soil, okay? Everything that goes in the subconscious mind, it just grows and it grows and it grows, okay? So let me give you another analogy. If you were to fly above a canopy, like a rainforest canopy, and all you could see are the leaves, right? So think of the leaves as the conscious part of your mind. It's the things that you see every day. It's the thoughts that you have. It's everything that you're kind of aware of. It's in the ether, or you can become aware of it quite easily. Work like Landmark, which gives you mastery in language and thought space, will take you down a level below that. It'll take you down to the branches. It'll even give you access into the bark of the tree, and with enough practice, you'll eventually get to some of the roots and you'll pull them up. But you'll find that ultimately, the way that you feel and the way that you think, even if you can catch it a lot faster and regain balance, which is really important, I think is probably the key to spirituality, is not so much getting worried about getting off balance. It's really about how quickly can you get back into balance. And Landmark's work does allow you to find balance very quickly again, except it doesn't really give you access to the subconscious part where the fertile soil is, where the roots are growing. So if we start looking at, and I mentioned this in a video months ago, but I'll show you again, this tattoo over here is of the Merkabah, which is basically two pyramids and three-dimensional pyramids intersecting with one another. Obviously looks a lot like the Star of David, and the Star of David is a Merkabah, and there's a lot of symbology to this, but even in scientific, pragmatic terms, this is the shape of every subatomic particle in the entire universe. So if you ever heard in quantum physics that when without the observer, there's no object, the moment you look at that object, it's basically subatomic particles arising into reality based on your conscious thought and your belief, and as the observer, you're literally creating that object in space-time, which is pretty mind-bending to think about all by itself. So what Buddhist teachings are is it teaches the act of non-reaction. Okay, so the things that you react to is everything that you're craving and everything that you're averting in your life. So every time something happens in your life and you get a stimulus, what's really happening is that your body is an input and output device, right? Kind of like the Matrix. Like, this is the machinery that we get. Like, the spirit is somewhere in this thing, and this is your chess piece, right? And this is how you connect to this reality, and it's your input and output device. So when you're out in public and there's people out there in the distance and they're talking or they're fighting or they're laughing, we can measure thought, we can measure energy, right? We know that somebody's speaking. It's like a ripple effect. There's a sound wave and an energy wave that's being output. That energy wave is moving out, right, through the environment and eventually hits you. And then the way you respond is you're like, oh, I have an itch, right? Because you don't have awareness over what's happening over there. You don't see that that's what's causing it. And there's all these sensations that are happening in the body. Now, that's a gross sensation, right? When like you feel an itch, that's a gross one. But if you really tune into your body, there's sensations happening in your body all the time at the more and more subtle levels of the body. And you can literally get these sensations down to the subatomic level. Now, I'm not claiming that I have sensations down at that level, but I can feel a lot of things over the last 4, 5, 6 months, ever since Vipassana, because of my meditation practice. And it's pretty amazing how keyed in you can get into your environment. And this is why I say that when the typhoon hit Indonesia, a bunch of people died, but no animals died, because the animals don't have this frontal lobe part of the brain. They're not seeing the world the way that we're seeing the world through conscious thought. They're at the more subtle level of the consciousness, which we call subconscious, but they're in there all the time. They're just using their bodies as sensory input and output devices, so they're completely keyed into their environment. It's something that we seem to have lost, and I do believe that we can all get that back at the highest level with just a little bit of education, which is why I'm offering all this education for you today. So if you go back to the idea I said about reactive, right? So you have reactions, and this is what the reactions are. It's you having a reaction and these subatomic particles that are essentially in the subconscious part of your brain. So every time, if you want to think about it, you have a reaction. It's like a seed that pops out and it hits this very fertile soil. And the moment it hits that soil, a tree starts growing, right? And then as you continue to react, what ends up happening is the fruit falls off the tree, the fruit hits the soil, disintegrates over time, and again, as the seeds come out of the fruit, you have more trees, and before you know it, there you are standing in the thick of a forest. And that's kind of how life goes. It's all these reactive states. So as I see it, the way that things enter the body, it's always through the sensory input and output device. So your environment gives you feedback. You have sensations, whether you're aware of them or not, you're having sensations in the body. That sensation gets interpreted into a feeling. That feeling goes up into your mind, gets interpreted into a thought. That thought gets interpreted into words, and those words get spoken, and that starts generating your reality, because language is your tool of reality, right? So even if you understand thought, you understand cognitive practices, NLP, you have mastery over language, etc., you're a few levels away from it. You might get into your body and even feel your feelings and really allow for them to be there, but you're not at the sensation level quite yet. And unless you go down into meditation, you're really not going to get there. So it's super important that if you want to create a cure and you want to get down to the root level of cause in your life and causality, is that you start having a meditation practice that brings you down to the sensation level of the body. And that's really what Vipassana allows you to do, is to key in to the sensations of your body. So here's a quick little thing I want to teach you, is that your subconscious, just like your body, requires fuel in order to keep going, to keep moving, to keep processing, okay? So in the body, when you eat food, right, that's your fuel. And if you should stop giving your body fuel, your body is going to continue to get fuel from the fat reserves it puts in your body. That's what fat is for. It's basically like energy that hasn't been used up, that your body is now storing just in case something happens, right? And that's why animals eat, obviously, before winters, and then they hibernate, and they're feeding off the blubber in their bodies to keep them going. Very, very obvious. And it's the same reason why when you stop feeding yourself, you lose weight, because again, your body's going into the fat reserves, it's eating them up, and we call that calorie deficit, and you start losing weight. And that's why people diet. And anyway, we'll get into a different conversation about dieting, but I don't want to go there. So in your subconscious, there's also fuel. There's something that's fueling it. And what's fueling it is the Merkabahs. It's the subatomic particles. It's the reactions. So it's like, you call it reactionary fuel. And again, it's what you're craving and what you're averting. So the only way to stop this process, to stop feeding this part of you fuel, is by stopping the reaction, which again is why you want to be doing meditation practice, is to get into the habit of not trying to change life, but accept it as it's coming in, surrender to it the way that it is, the way that it isn't, and then you stop having these gross reactions, these gross responses to it, and you stop giving this part of yourself fuel. Now, when you stop reacting and you stop giving this part of you fuel, just like your body, it needs to continue feeding. So what it starts doing is it starts going into all the old programming in your brain, all the old reactions, and it literally starts eating it up like fuel. And before you know it, you're not responding to people the way that you used to. You're not feeling the way that you used to. And that's kind of been my process the last 4 or 5 months, is just kind of like watching all these different things unravel in my life and just getting much, much more in tune with my heart. You guys seen a lot of my videos the last 4 or 5 months of being really emotional and crying and talking about my relationship and authenticity, kind of like flying through the roof. And I assert that it's all because of this process of this deprogramming that keeps happening in my brain, and I'm just finding myself responding in completely new ways in my life, and it requires no thought on my part. That's the really interesting and wonderful part, is I'm not sitting here processing. I'm not integrating all these things that people talk about. I'm processing, I'm integrating. Give me a time to think about it. Like, none of that is required here, because again, I'm at the sensation level of the body, which is 3 levels away, in my diagram, from where you even need to be thinking. So how does this apply to you? And I thank you for sticking with me in this video, because it's really important. Whether or not you understand this concept, I do want to, again, approach the idea of the temporal nature of everything. Everything in life is temporary. It's just moving. It's the resistance that you add, right, when you push back on an object, that creates persistence in your life, that creates the illusion of permanence. And again, when you stop resisting, this flow starts happening. When we say we're in flow, things move with velocity. This is what I'm talking about. It's just stopping to be being this like wall that when life comes at you, that everything hits, you just become much more malleable, fluid like water. You've heard great teachers of the past talking about being fluid like water. I believe that's what they mean, is just like stopping that resistance, right? So how does this again apply to you? Well, think about some situation that you've been dealing with recently, whether it's a heightened emotional negative state or something to that effect, right? How do you, quote unquote, overcome it? Well, the first thing is stop trying to overcome it, because that overcoming is creating the resistance point and it's creating that issue as permanence. Second thing is just surrender to it. Stop having conversation that it should be some other way, that it could be some other way, that it would have been some other way, just if, right? Those shoulda, woulda, couldas, those are significantly causing a lot of misery and hurting you by having that context. Just give it up. And when you say like just give it up, it means just give it up. Just stop thinking about it, stop talking about it, stop creating it, stop generating it. If you think that you're shoulda, woulda, coulda anything in your life, I promise you, somewhere it's causing you misery, it's causing you pain. Give it up. Have the context that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be all the time. That's what surrender is. It doesn't mean giving up. It just means accepting what is exactly as it is and exactly as it's not. Now, what I want you to notice is that feeling, whether it's anger or sadness or depression or even joy, there's a sensation in the body. Like when you're angry or you're depressed, there's a heaviness. Sometimes it feels like you're being choked over here, or there's like a heaviness in the chest, or maybe your thighs hurt or your hips hurt, something along that way, right? So what you can do is understand the truth of all things. And the truth is that it's temporary, and that all you're really experiencing is this temporary sensation in the body. So, the way people are doing it is as if they got like a bug bite, like they got a mosquito bite in their arm, and they're just sitting there going like, making it wrong, and it should be some other way, and why did this happen to me, and couldn't this have happened at some better time in my life? Why is this happening right now, right? And they're giving it so much attention. And what happens when you keep scratching an itch? That's like scratching the itch over and over again. It grows, right? It continues to grow. But the moment you stop responding to it, you stop reacting to the itch, it starts shrinking until eventually, an hour from now, you barely even feel the itch, or it's gone completely. So this exercise is exactly the same thing. You have a sensation in the body. It's just like an itch that you got, and you're angry, so you might have heaviness in your chest. But if you were to just close your eyes, and instead of trying to change the sensation, just observe it and understand the truth of the sensation, that the truth is it's just a sensation. And like all sensations, a universal truth is it's going to rise and it's going to pass. It's going to rise and it's going to pass. So if all you do is just go in and say, man, my chest is heavy, let me observe that heaviness. Within minutes, if you don't add a story to it, You don't try to change it. You don't think that it should be some other way than it is. Just observe the sensation. You will find that the sensation is going to do what all sensations do. It's going to show up, and then it's going to disappear. It's going to show up, and then it's going to disappear. Now, if this is the root, if this is the subconscious part of you, and from the subconscious is where the feelings, the thoughts, and the language comes from, if the sensation goes away, where does the thought, the feelings, and the language go with it? It disappears right along with it, and you'll immediately find relief. Now, don't get attached to the relief because another sensation is coming right after it. But in that moment where you're really upset or you're really heated or you had some argument and you want to get that relief, right, without creating dysfunction, without creating anger in your life, without creating a mess in your life, just sit down for a moment. This takes minutes to do. And just key in to the sensation and then stop reacting. And you'll find that the non-reactive state will then go in and make that sensation disappear for you. It's really, really powerful, guys. So that's the exercise. Try it. Let me know how it is. Comment below if you've done it. Comment at any time on this video and let me know if that's working for you. But here we are. It's Friday, right? And you've had this week of things, expectations that you came into the week with, all these things that you were attached to getting done, which, again, have probably created some tension or misery in your life because instead of being committed, you were attached to some kind of outcome. So let's take a look again. Here's a quick exercise. Write down the things that you were committed to this week. And most of you guys were attached to things this week. So it's like, what did you want to get done this week? That expectations that you set that weren't met. All those expectations that weren't met are currently creating upsets in your life, right? And these are expectations you may have had for a long time where they look like other expectations and you know the upset behind it very well. But here's Friday, right? And you're going to walk into Friday and you're like, so relieved it's Friday. I'm going to go drink my troubles away. All these expectations will just go to the wayside until they show up next week again. And then the vicious pattern continues. So why don't you take a moment and write down the expectations that you had this week that were unfulfilled, because those unfulfilled expectations are causing upsets in your life. So that's the first thing to notice. And get those complete. And what I mean by that is take responsibility. Look at yourself from the point of, I sourced that, and get those complete. Take responsibility for those things. It will create space again in your life. You'll go into this weekend without having to drown yourself in alcohol to feel better about things that didn't get done or to avoid or whatever it is that we do when we drink alcohol. You can drink alcohol, just do it joyously. Do it consciously. And complete your week. It's so important to do that. Otherwise, you're just sweeping things under the carpet and they just come back up again on Monday. And that's why Monday becomes this day of misery instead of this day of joy. A while back, I wrote a book called Living for Mondays. So on Monday, if you did the clearing work on Friday, you're going to have a lot of space walking into Monday because there's going to feel like there's space for creation. And you could start using thoughts and language to create into that space for the first time. And on Monday, I would, assert that you can sit down and very, very consciously create the rest of your week. But this time, instead of being attached to the result, get committed to the results that you want to create, right? When we say you're in a loving relationship, we say we're in a committed relationship. We don't say we're in an attached relationship, except that people collapse those two all the time. And when you're attached to your spouse or to what they're supposed to say or how they're supposed to feel, stuff like that, don't you just feel upset all the time that they're not the way they should be, they're not responding to you the way that they should be, they're not listening to you the way that they should be, instead of truly being committed to that person? For instance, I'm committed to global transformation. Every single day I wake up, the globe is not transformed. I don't have any upset about that. I keep playing the game very empowered and looking at new ways of how I can affect change and transformation in the world, right? If I was attached to the planet being transformed, every day I would wake up and upset. And that's just not the case for me. So there's a big difference, again, between being attached and committed. And I want to see if you can hear that difference for yourself. Because, again, attachments are just expectations. And ultimately, all expectations are unfulfilled, given enough time, some in the short term, some in the long term. And they all lead to upset. But if you're committed to something, it means that you're creating a possibility of something arising in the world. And you're just committed to that possibility being present, holding space for it over and over again. And again, whether it's there or not, you're still a stand for that possibility arising in the world. So again, guys, the three things take away from this video, and you can comment below what you got from this video, insights that you may have had, is number one, the subconscious part of your brain. It's the most fertile soil in the world. It's going to keep growing stuff. If you don't stop reacting, you're not going to find that you can heal yourself or cure yourself. So do the exercise. Key into your body, arising and passing. Notice the truth. It's just a sensation. Keep observing it until it disappears. And don't try to make it disappear. Let it disappear on its own. Okay? Number 2, complete your week. Figure out what you were attached to this week, what expectations you set that were unfulfilled. Make a list of those things. Instead of being attached to them, recreate them as a commitment on Monday after you created the space, after you've taken responsibility for the fact that you created those attachments. Nothing else created those shoulda, woulda, couldas for you. You did that. So take responsibility for them, clear it. If you need to talk to somebody and just share, be like, hey, this week I created X, Y, and Z. None of those things happened, and that's okay. Next week, I'm going to be committed to it. There's going to be no expectation of how it's going to arise or look in my life, and just get back to work, get back in integrity. Okay, guys? So I hope this was useful and effective for you. I know this is a little bit different than my normal videos, but I wanted to kind of generate a little bit of a different space for you today and really urge you to take on these practices. I promise you, these will absolutely change and increase the quality of your life. Love you guys. Happy Friday, and go enjoy your weekend. Take care. Bye.